Hello, my name is Andrew Haskell, and this is a video on budgeting. So let's begin with what is budgeting. Budgeting is a way that you track your expenses, and I want to apologize in this video. Live near some helicopters and things, so if you hear those sounds, the way I'm recording this, I won't stop, but that's why you'll hear those sounds. And so budgeting, what is a budget? A budget is a way that you track your finances, and it's kind of the core and base of how you track your finances. So I want to start with what is a budget, and then we'll go into how to do a budget, and then at the end I'll talk about why we do a budget. So what is a budget? Like I talked about, it's a way to track your finances, and there are really two parts to it. There's the plan part of how you plan to use your money, and then there's the tracking part of how you use your money. So I'm going to first explain a process or method on how to track your finances, and then after that we'll talk about the planning part, and it's then comparing the plan to what you track that you can then make informed and intentional decisions with your finances. But the bulk of this video is going to be about that, how to do the tracking part of finances. So let's begin. So on the computer here, I'm pulling up a budget template, and I'm going to make this budget template as I explain how to make the budget. And then this template will also be available to make a copy of. So we're going to start with, when we think about a budget, we want to track our expenses, our income and our expenses. In this Google Sheet, what I'm going to start with is the expenses. And so I'm going to name this sheet the expense transactions. And I want to know the date of the transaction, the item, or like description if you want to call it. And then I also want to know the amount, and then I want to know the category. And then I'm going to do some things to make this look nice. So I like to bold and center my columns. And something you can also do is you can delete columns if that also helps you, but some people don't like that, so I'm going to leave them there. Okay. So that's the expense transactions, and then I'm going to throw some expenses in there, and we'll just start in January of 2024. Okay, so now what I've done is I've put together, sorry that took a long time, but so what I've done is here we have the expense transactions. So on the expense page, you want to track the transaction, and for every transaction, you want to know the date, the description, the amount, and then we're going to define a category for it. And what I recommend is that if you use cash, keep your receipts, and this is where you would enter your receipts and just keep track of the transaction day. Or what I've found most easy is when I'm using my credit or debit card, I can go to those websites on online banking and I can export the transactions as a CSV or an Excel file, and then I will copy and paste those transactions over into this. So you can copy all of those transactions over from those exports, from those file exports of your transactions from either your bank or your credit card or something like that. So once you've copy pasted over those transactions, you can sort by the due date, and then you can assign your own categories. And you can keep the same sheet for the entire year. And so all the dates will be sorted, So all the dates will be sorted, and you can group them by month, and I'll show you how to do that. So now I've imported some of the transactions, and we're going to group them. So I'm going to insert a drop down here, which is where you get options. And so I'm just going to kind of fill some in here. I know people have rent, and then we're going to have probably utilities. And this is a place where you get to define the categories. So coffee, and then we'll go with that. And then I'm going to copy and spread this down, and you can make your own category. So this is rent. The car, that probably needs to be its own category. So I'm going to add another item for car, and then hit done. And I want to apply to all. Sorry, I went over that very fast. But this list applies now to all of those items. So car, and we'll take that pink. So this will be the car. I believe you can even yeah, perfect. Electric, that's a utility. Water, that's a utility. Internet, that's a utility generally is how people consider those. Phone, I'll call that a utility. Coffee. There's all the coffee. We'll make those orange. Groceries, its own category, so we'll make another category for grocery. That one green. And then you just kind of keep going through the categories. So this is grocery. You can hit enter once you've found it. So restaurants. Okay, so this one we need to add another one again. So restaurants. And you change the color by clicking this color here. And so we'll make it this color. Okay, this is a restaurants. And so you'd go through you'd go through all of your expense transactions and you're going to categorize them. Make sure to hit done when you've edited that list. Entertainment. Okay, so now I've gone through and I've categorized all of the transactions for the expenses. But you can see that some of the transaction dates aren't in order, like these two. Well, I wanted this one in the first month. You can see that some of the transaction dates are out of order. And so to clean up all the transaction dates, what I'm going to do is highlight the range. I don't want to highlight the top. I'm going to go to Data, Sort Range, and you can just sort column A to Z, or you can go to Advanced Sorting Options. You can choose the column you want to sort by, and you can add secondary sorts and things like that. So if you wanted to do a secondary sort, you could go Data, Sort Range, Advanced Sort, and then if you wanted to also sort by column D, the category, and then sort A to Z, for example. So then it's going to regroup them. So now it's all sorted. You want to highlight the whole range when you do the sort, so that way it keeps all of the rows together, so so your data doesn't get jumbled. So that way your data doesn't get jumbled. Okay, so now we have categorized our transaction data, and so now we want to see how much did we spend each month per category. And I used to do this with a lot of formulas, but we're going to do something else. So we're going to go here. I'm going to highlight the data again, but now we're going to highlight all the data. I'm going to go to Insert and then Pivot Table. And I'm going to put it in a new sheet and create. And so in this sheet, in the rows, I want to have the categories. And then in the columns, I want to have the date. And for the values, I want it to be the amount that it is. Okay, so now that we've done that, our pivot table is going to show us by every day that there's a transaction, but we don't want a transaction there. So I'm going to right click on the date and go to Create Pivot Date Group, and then you can do it how you like, but I would recommend the month one right here. And so remember that all my transactions were in January and February, and so now here the pivot table has already calculated how much was spent in each category for months. So it'll tell you the total for the year, and then also the total for the month at the bottom and the total in each category. I'm going to call this expense pivot. Okay. Now, some formatting things too to make things look nicer. And I can get rid of this. Some formatting to make this look nicer. You can go to Format, Theme, and you can click one of these that looks nice to you. But what I'm going to do is find one that I like. There we go. And done. And exit out of there. So now the pivot table is fixed up. Now, as you add transactions, so 2024, let's say we pay rent for next month. I'm going to grab this transaction here just so a lot of the data copies over. And let's say this is for March. Then we go over to our pivot table. We don't see March. That's because the data for the pivot table hasn't been updated. So we want to go over here to Edit. And then for this data, we're going to just increase this to D240. And that's going to expand the rows that are in our data set. And then we can see that the March for rent has come in here and populated as well. And it's giving us this row because there's unfilled data here. And which we can probably filter that out if we go to columns, filters, add, date, and then we want to remove blanks, hit OK, and we'll remove the blanks from there, from the pivot table. So that's how we can get that view for that pivot table. Now let's track income. And very similar setup. So I'm actually going to copy the expense headers. And we'll do the same thing. So, and then we 15, 16, and then we'll see if you can. Say check. Job, you got a bonus, and it was 1,000. And then April, we got a tax return. Show the other financial people like as well. All right, I'm going to go to Insert, Drop Down. I'm going to make my categories. There are fewer categories here, but some categories I recommend. So there's going to be your job, and then like a tax return, bonus, and gifts are kind of some different categories that you might want to keep track of. Job is green, taxes purple. Bonus maybe dark green, and a gift is like a dark blue maybe. Something like that. Okay, and so then we're going to take this chip, done on that chip, and then now we're copying and spreading, auto-filling that chip all the way down. And then here, a lot of these were for job. I'm actually going to go job. And you can auto-fill these as well. And then we'll just go to here and bonus, and then I had a taxes, and then we'll make this one a gift as well. One you might have also is like interest is another category that we can fit. But the point is, I think you get the point that we're tracking transactions and putting them into categories. And then same thing to do the pivot table. So insert pivot table into a new sheet, and then same thing. Rows are the categories, columns are the date, values are the amount. Then we'll come up here and create pivot date group by month. And then because we adjusted our theme on the other one, the pivot table has kept that theme. And so we can see kind of the earnings month to month. Okay, and we'll call this income pivot table. Next, I'm going to do 2 summary pages. So this will be a monthly summary. And then for the monthly summary, I want to see the some things that you might want to see. So your income for the month, your total income, total expense for the month, expense per category, and expense per category. Those are the 3 things we'll show. So for the income, I'm just going to type equals and then go to my income pivot. And if we're doing this for January, then we'll come get that January value. For the expense, I'm going to hit equal. And then for the expense pivot, I'm going to come get that from January. And that is how you can populate that. And then now what I will do is grab these 2, insert chart. It's taking it a second. And we want a horizontal bar chart. And then I like under customize, I do like to, on the series, add the data labels to see that. And then I kind of want the text color to be white for me to see. I think that looks more nice. So there's that table, and then expense per category. And so what I'm going to go to is go to the expense pivot table, and I'm going to go like this, insert chart. And then I can copy this chart and move it to my monthly summary for January, and that is how you can see. And then we'll edit the chart. Just a few things to change: customize series, data labels, and we'll leave them like that for auto because it's somewhere on the white and somewhere on the black. So there you can see on a monthly picture how much you're spending and where everything is going. And then one thing that I like is an annual summary. And so for every month, we want to see our monthly income and our monthly expenses, and then a net. And then we'll do the months: January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, October, November, December. Perfect. And you can alter the formatting as well, how you see fit. This is just for an example. And then for here, you just hit equal. You can go to your income pivot and come and grab these values. And it'll come in. Now it will do something funky as you're dragging it horizontally. Remember, this is the total because the pivot table is being built still. So just something to keep in mind. And then same thing for the expenses, equals. And the expense pivot, remember we only did 2 months here. So we're going to get that cell. And then we only did the 2 months, remember. And then for the net, equals your income minus your expenses. And then we can do the same thing for the following months. Perfect. And then I'll set all these to the accounting format. There you go. And then we can make a line chart of this data, insert chart. And then we will want a line chart, for example. Switch rows and columns. There we go. And so that's a way we can get a chart that shows our income, our expense. We could probably even make it a, if you wanted it to be a bar chart as well. So that's another way to represent it as well, if you wanted to do it that way. Might be more clear. And then I do like, the data labels don't look like they'll work here. But you can see kind of at a glance if you're making or losing money each thing. And the cool thing about this sheet is that all you have to do to continue tracking your budget, now that you've set up now that the template is set up, is only the expense and the income transactions need to be tracked, and the annual summary will update on its own. Now the monthly summary, you would need to go in and make one for every month and update the data fields where they're pulling from. But I think by showing, I think through this demonstration, it makes sense on how you would pull those figures to generate a summary such as this every month. And if you don't need a chart, you can still just come look at the income pivot table or the expense or income pivot table, and the same values are there. It's just in a number format. So that's how you set up and track on the budget. Let me talk about why for a second, the reasons of why to do a budget. So a budget is, like I said, it's a place to make decisions about your income. So the next step would be, we have these categories here. And what you could do is, for your budget, for example, we have the categories. And then on the annual summary, I'm going to come and get my months here that I have. and you want to say, okay, I know how much my car costs, I know how much these things cost. And so you start to get to make decisions. You start to get to make decisions on how much money you want to spend in each category. And so you can make a plan on the budget, and then you can compare it to how much you actually spent on the pivot. And that allows you to see how things are. So you could, once you have this format set up and you have your plan, you can come and see here and then compare those values, and you could put it in a chart to compare those values. But the point of this sheet is to demonstrate a way to easily track the expenses and the income, to track that on a transaction level, and then use the spreadsheet to do the interpretation and automated summing into all the categories once you have that done. And then things like the summaries are able to show month to month how that's going for you. So I wanted to make this video just as a hopefully simple to understand and follow way for someone to start a budget if they've never been shown how to track or keep a budget. Really, it is as simple as tracking your expenses, tracking your income, planning how much you want to spend in each of those categories, and then you keep tracking it every month to see if you're meeting those goals or not. And that is a very basic and baseline project, or that is a very baseline and simple approach to budgeting. I hope this was an approachable and quick how to do a budget, and that somebody finds this helpful and useful and succinct. So thank you for watching. Again, my name is Andrew Haskell, and this is Full Life.